Johnny Carson's hand was shaking. It was November 14th, 1985. The Tonight Show was taping live at NBC Burbank Studios. 300 people sat in that audience. Millions more watched from their living rooms across America. And Johnny Carson, the man who had made this country laugh for 23 years straight, could not speak. His face had gone pale. His eyes were wet. The cue cards in his hand trembled like leaves in a storm. Ed McMahon stood up from his chair. The band stopped playing. The director's voice crackled through Johnny's earpiece, desperate and confused. "Johnny? Johnny, you're live! Talk to us!" But Johnny wasn't listening. He was staring at a 7-year-old girl standing in front of the stage. A tiny girl in a blue dress 2 sizes too big. A girl wearing a man's wristwatch that hung loose on her small arm. A girl holding a folded piece of paper like it was the most important thing in the world. She had just whispered something to him, and whatever she said had broken him. The audience sat frozen. Nobody understood what was happening. This was Johnny Carson, the king of late night, the man who had done this 11,000 times before, the man who never lost his composure, the man who could handle anything. But now tears were streaming down his face. 30 seconds of dead air, an eternity in television, the longest silence in Tonight Show history. What did a 7-year-old girl say that brought Johnny Carson to his knees on live television? The answer will change the way you see this man forever. If you're already feeling this story, drop a like right now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. This is just the beginning. Her name was Emily Warren. She was 7 years old, brown hair, big eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. 8 weeks before that night, Emily's world had collapsed. Her father, Michael Warren, was 34 years old. He worked as a high school janitor in Pasadena, California. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but he was the greatest dad Emily had ever known. Michael Warren had one obsession in life, one thing that made him happy no matter how hard his day had been: The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Every single night, Michael would sit in his worn-out recliner, Emily on his lap, and watch Johnny's monologue. He knew every joke, every gesture, every pause. He would practice Johnny's golf swing in their tiny backyard. He would repeat Johnny's punchlines at dinner until Emily's mother rolled her eyes and laughed. "Why do you love Johnny so much, Daddy?" Emily once asked. Michael's answer was simple: "Because when I watch him, I forget that life is hard. He makes me believe that no matter how bad things get, there's always something to smile about." 3 months before the accident, Michael did something crazy. He entered a radio contest. He called in over 200 times in one weekend, and he won 2 front-row tickets to a Tonight Show taping. Michael had screamed so loud the neighbors came running. He picked Emily up and spun her around the kitchen. "We're going to see Johnny, baby girl. Front row. We're going to be so close we can see him breathe." Emily had never seen her father so happy. Then September 15th happened. A drunk driver ran a red light on Colorado Boulevard, hit Michael's car on the driver's side. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Emily was supposed to go with him that day. A last-minute cold kept her home. She never got to say goodbye. But Michael had left something behind. The tickets were still in Michael's nightstand. 2 front-row seats to The Tonight Show. November 14th, 1985. Non-refundable, non-transferable. One of them still had Michael's name printed on it. Emily's mother, Karen, didn't know what to do with them. Throwing them away felt like throwing away the last piece of her husband's dream. But going without him seemed impossible. Emily made the decision for her. "I want to go, Mommy." Karen looked at her daughter, this tiny girl who hadn't smiled since the funeral, who barely ate, who woke up crying every night calling for a father who would never come. "Honey, it might be too sad." Emily shook her head. "Daddy wanted to take me. If we don't go, his dream dies too. I don't want his dream to die, Mommy." Karen broke down crying. Her 7-year-old daughter was thinking more clearly than any adult in the room. They would go. The night before the taping, Karen found Emily sitting on her bed, holding a piece of paper. She was writing something carefully, slowly, concentrating hard on every word. "What's that, baby?" Emily folded the paper and put it in her pocket. "It's for Johnny." Karen assumed it was a drawing, a child's thank you note. She didn't push. She should have. The night of the taping, Emily insisted on wearing her father's watch. It was too big for her wrist. She had to wrap tape around it just to keep it from falling off. But she wouldn't go without it. The drive to Burbank was silent. Emily sat in the back seat, clutching that folded paper, staring out the window at the city lights her father would never see again. When they arrived at NBC Studios, the energy was electric. People laughing, people excited, the hottest ticket in television. Emily didn't smile. They took their seats. Front row. The seats Michael had won. One empty space beside them where he should have been. Karen whispered, "Daddy's watching from heaven, sweetheart." Emily nodded slowly. "I know, Mommy. That's why I have to give Johnny the letter." Karen froze. "What letter? Emily, what did you write?" Before Emily could answer, the lights dimmed. The band started playing. Ed McMahon's voice boomed through the studio. "Here's Johnny!" And Johnny Carson walked through that curtain. Emily stood up, not to applaud, not to cheer. She was ready to deliver her father's final message. Keep watching. What happens next stopped an entire television show and brought 300 strangers to tears. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from right now. The monologue was going perfectly. Johnny was on fire that night, political jokes landing, celebrity impressions getting huge laughs. The audience was eating out of his hand. But something kept pulling Johnny's attention. A little girl in the front row. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't even smiling. She was just staring at him with an intensity that didn't belong on a child's face. Big brown eyes locked onto him like she was waiting for something. Johnny kept going. He was a professional. He'd done this thousands of times. But every few seconds, his eyes drifted back to her. Something about that oversized watch on her tiny wrist. Something about the way she was clutching that paper. Something about the empty seat beside her. Johnny finished his last joke. The audience erupted in laughter. And in that brief moment of silence, the little girl stood up. Karen grabbed her arm. "Emily, no!" But Emily was already moving, walking toward the stage. Security stepped forward, but Johnny held up his hand. "Wait. Let her come." The audience went dead quiet. Johnny walked to the edge of the stage and knelt down to Emily's level. His knees cracked. He didn't care. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Her voice was tiny, but steady. "Emily, my daddy loved you, Mr. Carson." Johnny smiled warmly. "Well, that's very kind. Is your daddy here tonight?" Emily shook her head. "He died 2 months ago. A car accident." The audience gasped. Johnny's smile disappeared. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I'm sure your daddy is watching from... He wrote you a letter." Emily held up the folded paper. "Before he won the tickets, he wrote this. He said if he ever met you, he wanted you to read it. He never got to meet you. So I brought it for him." Johnny stared at the paper, then at Emily, then back at the paper. He took it gently, unfolded it. The audience watched as Johnny Carson began to read. At first, his face was calm, professional. Then something shifted. His eyebrows pulled together, his lips pressed tight, his jaw clenched. He kept reading, and then Johnny Carson's hands started trembling. Ed McMahon stood up. "Johnny?" The director's voice came through the earpiece. "Johnny, we're live. What's happening?" Johnny didn't respond. He couldn't. His eyes were filling with tears. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. The king of late night, the man who had entertained America for over 2 decades, the man who had never broken character on live television, was crying. His shoulders shook. He covered his mouth with his hand. The letter trembled in his grip. 300 people sat in complete silence. Emily stepped closer. She reached out and touched Johnny's hand. Daddy said you would understand, Mr. Carson. He said you were the only person in the world who would understand. Johnny looked at her through his tears. His voice cracked, barely a whisper. Emily, your father. I had no idea. What was in that letter? What did Michael Warren write that shattered Johnny Carson on live television? The answer reveals a secret connection between a janitor from Pasadena and the biggest star in America. A connection that began 30 years before Emily was even born. Johnny looked at the audience, then at Emily, then at the 300 strangers waiting in breathless silence. He took a deep breath and spoke. I need to tell you something. I need to tell you who this little girl's father really was. He held up the letter. Michael Warren, a janitor from Pasadena, a man I never met, but a man who just taught me something I'll never forget. Johnny's voice steadied as he read parts of the letter aloud. Mr. Carson, you don't know me, but you saved my life when I was 12 years old. The audience leaned forward. In 1955, my father died in a factory accident in Nebraska. I was lost. I stopped talking. I stopped eating. My mother didn't know what to do with me. One night, she left the television on, and your show came on. I watched your monologue, and for the first time in 3 months, I laughed. Johnny's voice cracked. That laugh saved me, Mr. Carson. It reminded me that joy could exist even when everything hurt. I've watched your show every single night since then. 30 years. You've been there for me when no one else was. Johnny paused, wiped his eyes. And now I'm dying. The audience gasped. Johnny continued reading. I have cancer, Mr. Carson. The doctors say I have a few months, but I'm not scared. Because you taught me that even in the darkest night, there's always a reason to smile. I won't get to meet you, but my daughter will. Please tell her that her daddy loved her. And please tell her that laughter is how we survive. Johnny lowered the letter. He looked at Emily. Your father didn't die in that car accident by chance, Emily. He was already sick. He knew he didn't have much time, and his final wish wasn't for himself. It was for you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Johnny knelt down again and held both her hands. Your daddy spent his whole life learning how to smile through pain. And now he wants you to learn the same thing. Not because life isn't hard, but because laughter is how we keep going. Emily whispered, He really loved you, Mr. Carson. Johnny nodded. And I really love him too, even though we never met. Because anyone who understands what laughter really means is family to me. Johnny stood up, but he wasn't finished. What he did next became one of the most legendary moments in television history, and it would change Emily's life forever. If this story is hitting you right now, smash that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. The ending is coming. Johnny reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his signature pocket square, navy blue with white edges, the same one he'd worn for over a decade. He folded it carefully and placed it in Emily's hands. I want you to have this, Emily. Every night I do this show, I wear one of these. Whenever you miss your daddy, hold this and remember that somewhere out there, someone is trying to make people smile, just like your father wanted. Emily clutched it like it was made of gold. Johnny stood and walked her back to Karen. Karen was sobbing, unable to speak. Johnny leaned in and whispered, Your husband was a hero, ma'am. Emily's going to be just fine. He turned to the audience. We're going to take a short break, folks, but I want you to remember something tonight. The people who love us never really leave. They just find new ways to reach us. Michael Warren reached me tonight through a letter and the bravest little girl I've ever met. The audience erupted into a standing ovation. 300 strangers, crying, clapping, some hugging each other. During the commercial break, Johnny asked his producer to bring Emily and Karen backstage after the show. When they arrived, Johnny had one more gift, a framed photo of himself, signed personally. The inscription read, For Emily and Michael Warren. Your daddy taught me something tonight. Keep laughing forever. With love, Johnny Carson. Then Johnny made a promise. Emily, every year on your birthday, I'm going to dedicate a joke to your father. So wherever you are, you'll know that someone remembers him. Johnny kept that promise every single year, until the day he retired. Emily Warren is 46 years old today. She works as a grief counselor in Los Angeles. She specializes in helping children who have lost parents. Every day, she uses her father's story to show them that healing is possible. On her office wall hangs Johnny's pocket square in a gold frame. Next to it, the signed photograph. And beside that, a copy of her father's letter. She still wears Michael's watch. It fits now. Every year on her birthday, Emily watches old Tonight Show reruns, and she tells her patients the same thing Johnny told her that night. Laughter isn't about forgetting pain, it's about surviving it. Johnny Carson died in 2005. When Emily heard the news, she wrote a letter to his widow, Alexis. A month later, Alexis replied, "Johnny never forgot you, Emily. He talked about that night often. He said your father's letter reminded him why he did what he did for 30 years. Not to be famous, but to help people smile when smiling felt impossible." Today, Emily's daughter is 7 years old, the same age Emily was that night. They watched the tape together last year. NBC had given Emily a digital copy decades ago. Her daughter asked, "Did Johnny really cry, Mommy?" Emily smiled. "Yes, baby, because my daddy's words reached him. And that's what love does. It reaches people even when we're gone." If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. What moment of unexpected kindness changed your life? Tell me in the comments. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from right now. And remember, even in your darkest night, there's always a reason to smile. And maybe that's the part of this story that matters most. Not the silence on live television, not even the tears of a man who had made millions laugh, but the quiet truth behind it. That the smallest voices often carry the heaviest truths. That a 7-year-old child can understand something most adults spend a lifetime running from. Pain doesn't disappear. It doesn't resolve neatly. It doesn't wait for us to be ready. But it can be carried. Michael Warren never became famous. He never stepped on a stage. He never knew Johnny Carson would read his words. And yet, in the darkest moments of his life, he chose one simple thing. He chose to pass comfort forward, not through money, not through power, not through attention, but through laughter. Because laughter isn't denial. It isn't pretending everything is okay. It's a signal to the world and to ourselves that we're still here, still breathing, still standing. And maybe that's the quiet lesson this story leaves behind. You don't have to be seen by millions to matter. You don't have to be remembered by history to leave a mark. Sometimes, all it takes is one honest moment, one kind word, passed from one hurting person to another. And long after the lights go out, long after the applause fades, that kindness is what remains. So if you're watching this tonight, and life feels heavier than usual, remember this. Someone, somewhere, is holding on, because of something you once said, or something you haven't said yet. And that might be the most important role you'll ever play.